Tux FM. And he passed his undergrad, I know he did, unlike a lot of people who get involved in campus radio and kind of never do finish their degrees. And he joined Jacaranda as the music manager. He left the company for a while to do industrial relations for a while, but he managed to get back as a music manager, and now currently runs all the programming at Jacaranda FM. So thanks for joining us, guys. First of all, just to open up, Chris, what's COVID-19 been like in Lesotho, and how's it affected your the station that you're currently running?
It's tough, Neil, working differently, because obviously with COVID, you have to be very cautious of what you do. Currently, what we're having, we've got a couple of shows that are broadcast outside studio. Obviously, we need to have plan B. Our breakfast show, our afternoon drive, and a couple of shows are not being broadcast from the studio because obviously time and again, we need to send our staff out for testing.
Your mic is muted there.
Everything becomes different. So we're trying our level best to keep everyone at ease, especially our listeners, but it's cold in Lesotho, which makes life difficult for everyone from broadcasting to government as well. It's difficult because it's cold.
Just to reiterate, if you want to connect with us, you can put your comments in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll get to them. Also, you can follow us on Facebook, on the Wits Radio Academy Facebook page, as well as at Radio Days Africa on Twitter with the hashtag Radio RDA 2020. You can send us voice notes as well to 079 528 0000. If you're outside the country, just the country code's +27 and you drop the 0. So that's 079 528 0000. Or you can go to the Wits Radio Academy website as well. That's www.radiodaysafrica.co.za. Sianda, how's it affected things at 5FM?
It's been, interesting first 5 months. We've had to overhaul our strategies, change things around. It has certainly put the team under pressure to make sure that everything goes out, to make sure that we still deliver the expected product under these conditions. Because to be honest, it's not an easy thing to do, not knowing whether the pandemic is going to end when. It has certainly put the team under pressure, and fortunately we've managed to function under that pressure.
Henny, what's it been like at Jacaranda?
Yeah, Neil, definitely different. I think that we might have thought about what the future of work and the future of broadcasting would look like in 10 years, and it kind of happened in 10 days. So, I think it's really shown us the value of really great technical people within the building and really great producers, and then the resilience from talent and from the team. So, we broadcasted all the shows remotely for almost a month. Which worked really well. We've got the daytime talent back in studio at the moment, but we've got a majority of the team still working remotely. And I think it shows that these kind of things are possible. So it makes you reevaluate how we can all operate going forward. So interesting.
Okay, let's get into our first set of questions. Please, if you're online with us and you're registered and you in the session with us, we encourage you to go to the Q&A and send us your questions, as well as in the chat screen, and we'll get to them. We got an email like last night from Kwena Makato, and he's got 3 questions here. And the first one, Henny, I think you can take this one. How can interns show 100% commitment in the station and ask personalities/employees politely to show them all the ropes of the station without stepping on each other?
Hey, Kwena. Politely in the radio environment, great. I think having come from campus radio myself, I think that the best way to get stuck in is just to get your hands dirty and to raise your hand and to get involved. To get involved in all of the areas. I think that you've already seemingly got the right approach in terms of being respectful of people's spaces and all of that. But at the same time, all of us started as juniors within this industry. So I think that there's a lot of tolerance to impart knowledge. I think that people are more likely to impart knowledge in this industry than a lot of others. So, you know, I think that showing your willingness to learn and showing your ability to show up and to assist will really help you. So, yeah.
Okay, Sianda, there's a question for you. What are the criteria? This is also from Kwena. What are the criteria of a good content producer? And how can a community campus content producer adjust in a commercial station?
Yeah, thank you for that. Hi, Kwena. I think what's important is to firstly understand that the industry has evolved, and you're no longer only a content producer. You have to evolve into a content creator, because essentially what's currently happening is stations are competing with content creators outside their immediate environment. So to be a content producer into that commercialized space, you first need to be a creator, because you will not only be expected to produce content, you'll be expected to rehash that content, edit that content, package the content, and then in coming months or in coming years, you'll find out that one person is doing all these functions, which all boils down to being a content creator. So I think that's what you need to look at doing. Be able to edit, be able to package. At the extreme, you can present.
Okay, Chris, out in Lesotho, good to have you online. We can actually see you now. That's great. There's a question for you. How can young creatives with a small social media following work with commercial radio stations?
I think, Nick, the most important thing that I want to give to Kwena is when you start broadcasting, the most important thing is to be a broadcaster. You know, when we
I think we've got a bit of a
contract talent, not just an individual. So you need to hone that. Forget about social media. I'm yet to be convinced as a former programs manager, I'm yet to be convinced that social media numbers translate into radio audience. I've checked, I've tried, I've done my own research in the past couple of years. It doesn't. That is why stations currently in the country, they look for talent. If you have a big followers on social media, it's a big plus. I mean, I'll make an example for you. If you listen to Jacaranda, for instance, everything revolves around the station. Even on air, it's Jaka Sport, it's Jaka News. It's all about the station because everything revolves within the station. So you as a presenter, you need to hone your craft and ensure that you fit into a station. It should not be the other way around. Forget about social media, hone your craft, become on-air personality, become a presenter, you get contracted to deliver content on air. Your delivery should be the key. Forget about people who are following you. People follow you for other reasons, but you should be followed online for one thing, which is broadcasting, and a skill is you need to be able to present. As a newsreader, the
Chris, we're having some connection problems there, but just to come in here, I think most stations have license conditions. Well, all stations have license conditions with ICASA, and I'm sure a lot of them have a training component. And in some of the stations I've worked at, to deal with learnerships, internships, shadowing has got to be part of strategy, part of policy, and needs to be managed internally. And so when people come on learnerships or internships or come to shadowing, there's got to be some kind of plan. You can't just be throwing people into departments or into the newsroom, into the music department. There needs to be a structure and some kind of feedback loop. So when they leave, you know, they're going to take something away with them that's going to be useful to them in the future. And then the other thing about the content producers is, or producer, I think that this notion of having different departments and hierarchies is actually been phased out. And the way we've got to deal with content in the future is looking at teams. And in those teams will be digital skills, content creation, and skills, as well as the technical skills, the editing, the video, the audio, and then the curation of stuff in the online environment. So people need to be skilled in a number of ways. So this hyper specialization that people have, I only do this or I only do that. I think those things are going to be falling away in the future. Chris, are you back with us there? We lost you.
Yes, I am. I'm back, Nick.
Okay, let's get to some questions. We've got a lot of questions. They come flooding in. From Sima Fio, there's, how can a radio presenter who's currently unemployed approach a program manager to possibly get a job at their station or get feedback and pointers to work on? And just, that's quite important, because as program managers, and I'd like to ask you individually, how many demos are you getting a week and how do you deal with them? Sianda.
Hi. So on average, I'm getting about 12 demos a week, and then what I've done is I've set out a specific day during the week where I go through all the demos, and based on the policies that I have for 5FM and the style guide that we have as 5FM, and then I assess and respond based on that style guide. And also, it's very important that the issue around demos, that when someone is busy recording or doing a demo, you need to understand the brand you are sending the demo to. What type of brand are you sending that demo? And from my end, it's a matter of understanding is the person delivering on just the basics, because we do come across where demos are just failing on the basics, and also understanding that the amount of time that we have as program managers, we do not have enough hours in a day. So the time we spend is really important on the demos. So we try by all means to respond, but some others, you just don't find time to respond to. But it's important that if you are sending a demo, you need to understand the brand you are sending to, and are you a brand fit?
Chris, how are you responding to approaches with demos and CVs?
For me, I was fortunate enough because with 2000, the strategy was very simple. Instead of you looking for us, I would look for you. I would listen to almost every station in the country because of the reach. 2000 with, I think it was currently it's one of the 3 stations in the country with the national footprint. So it was easy for me to listen to different stations and listen. But the most important thing that Sianda pointed out, Nick, is you need to be able to find a fit. You need to be able to assess yourself as a presenter and look at a station and say, if I go to Jacaranda and speak to Henny, or if I go to Kai and speak to Nick, for instance, would I fit in there? And once you can answer that, then you'll be able to create your demo in line with the station strategy and how the station sounds, because the most important thing is the sound. Are you going to be able to fit into the station or the other way around? So I receive around 9 to 10 demos a week, and I would respond to say, you know what, go to your community or campus stations, start from the bottom. It's from a distance, it's easy when you're looking at it and say, I want to work for 5FM, I want to work for Jacaranda, Kaya. There are so many stations in the country currently, and everyone believes they can crack it. It's fine to have confidence, but start from elsewhere so that when you look back and say, this is where you started, and then you build your career over the years, that gives you the experience and the knowledge. And that as well, you also need to be able to go attend workshops, go to seminars, invest in your craft, ask for inputs, ask for advices. When you do your demo, sometimes you get a demo and you can tell this has been edited overly, because you can tell how a demo should be and how a person sounds. Now you interview a person and you listen to a demo, it's 2 different things. So the most important thing is forget about demos. Be a presenter at a campus station. You will be heard, your community will appreciate you first, and then from there it's easy for you to be able to move up the ladder to a regional station up until you get to national station.
Okay, Henny, how many demos are you getting a week and how are you dealing with them?
Yeah, Neil, I probably also, I think similar to what Chris and Sianda are saying, probably about 15 to 20 in a week. And, it's difficult. It's difficult to get through everything. I think that, if and where time allows, we try and listen to as much as we can. I'll I'll share some of it with some of my team to get a bit of an outside ear into it as well. But I think, you know, what Chris was saying now makes sense to me, and I agree with that. I think that you know, as talent or as an aspiring broadcaster, you need to be able to solve a problem for the person you're approaching. So when you're approaching you know, someone at 5FM, you know, how are you contributing to 5FM? You know, and I think that can allow you to come across in a much more focused and direct way than sending a message to 20 people and saying, "Hi, please find my demo attached." You know, I think that's a real way to engage. So yeah, so that's my take on it.
Yeah, just in my personal experience, I was taught a very good lesson where you've got to listen to every demo you get and respond to them. I know it takes a bit of time, but in my career, there's been on more than one occasion where I've overlooked someone and then I've heard them on a commercial broadcaster and gone, I haven't done my job. You know, so people, when they send you demos, you've got to take them seriously. They want to get in. And I mean, one of the kind of prerequisites, we all love football, is there's only 11 on the field and 4 on the bench. And that's how much space we have. And a lot of people go, oh, you never answer, you know, you never give me a chance. This comes back to the development of talent and what you spoke about earlier in terms of internships like learnerships and shadowing. Just to remind all the people online, we've got a poll here. And you can enter it and say yes or no or more than once. And the question is, have you ever emailed the program manager with a demo and never received a reply? It's going to be a difficult one at the end of the show. Just to get into our questions quickly, just one more question before we go to voice notes. And it's from Claire Mawisa, one of the moderators for Radio 2020. And this is something that program managers struggle with every single day or every single year when it's for contract renewal time. We keep recycling the same on-air talent between radio stations. How do we break this cycle? Sianda?
You know, in one conversation I've had around talent, I was saying that the entire industry is to blame because we did not create the spaces to start incubating talent, and it's a matter of how, as an industry, we respond to that. So, to make a simple example, with us at 5, there was an innovation which was launched a year ago, where there was a competition ran, and out of that there was a squad. It was called the 5 Squad. Now these kids were incubated within the station, so they got to learn the 5FM way of doing radio. They got to learn the commercial way of doing radio, and fast forward 12 months. And the 3 of them were absorbed into the lineup. So the industry, within the industry, we need such innovation where stations themselves or broadcasting houses create these incubational spaces where talent is taught the ins and outs of the brand of commercial broadcasting or anything around broadcasting and radio.
Anyone else want to have a comment on that? Have a go before we go to voice notes.
Yeah, Neil, I think that you know, it is difficult, and I think that especially you know, when you consider the commercial stations and the role that they have to play, you know, I think that there's a balance that needs to occur where you know, audiences you know, often seek familiarity, and audiences seek that sort of connection to a talent. Which is part of our mandate to entertain that audience. But on the other hand, you know, we need to have these spaces. We need to create elements where we can draw and we can nurture talent, and not just talent for on air. I think that the more critical thing is the off-air talent, and I think that it might be something that we discuss a little bit later. But in terms of shortage of talent, in terms of producers, in terms of technical staff, I think that there's a real need to develop a lot of that. You know, so we've been working with Bits for years on an internship program, and we've seen great results in that, and we've got people still working within the organization now. So yeah.
Chris, like regurgitating the same old DJ station every year in April? Okay, Chris is having a bit of technical issues there. Okay, let's go to some voice notes and see what questions come up.
This is Radio Days Africa 2020.
It's Aubrey from Alex FM. You guys said that voice and talent are not enough, and therefore more skills are needed. What do you really mean when you say more skills are needed? Are you guys able to tabulate a few more skills that can make one a great on-air presenter?
Good day, my name is Ignatius from LFM in Stexpride. I just want to find out, how do they do the RAMs? Which company is doing the RAMs? Thank you.
Hi, this is Tumelo, all the way in Botswana, and I wanted to ask the things that are really necessary, or the equipment necessary to start podcast.
This is Radio Days Africa 2020.
Okay, a couple of interesting questions there. Let's start off with Aubrey's question. He emailed it to me as well. Aubrey and I have a long history going back a couple of years. Aubrey's thing was voice and talent, and I've always said more skills. And if you're going to be, I mean, when we spoke about demos, and 95% of the demos we get are people who want to be on air. But radio is quite a dynamic like business, and there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than just putting on the microphone. So, Henny, in terms of additional skills as a program manager, what do you need besides the on-air skills?
Well, I think part of the on-air skills that we need, more than just the voice and things like that, is being able to entertain the audience, and that means that you need to be able to develop that skill of storytelling. First of all, I think that's something that is often overlooked. We'll often see when we speak to talent, it becomes very formulaic. So being able to draw that in. But I think that, as we mentioned earlier, part of what we're experiencing now is the need to be able to do everything. So you need to be able to edit, to be able to basically edit some audio. You need to be able to be technically astute, that if something goes wrong, that you can at least do a basic level of troubleshooting. You need to understand music clocks and how that structure and form flows and why that's in place. So there's a lot of programming kind of need around that. Plus, then you also need to have your sales hat and your marketing hat on at times, where you need to understand the value you need to deliver to the client and to the brand. So there's a lot to go on.
Sianda, have you got any points on this, the skills that you need besides the on-air skills in radio?
To my earlier point, Neil, one of the key things is to be able to create content. Copying and pasting is one thing, but creating an extension from what you've sourced, which is you rehash what's already been is in existence, and you make it your own. So those are the additional skills which are in most times required in radio. And then to Henny's point as well, if you are handed a 15-page ad log, you need to be able to focus on that ad log, because it concerns money. So there are a whole lot of other different elements that are behind the scenes for a basic 3-hour show that as a content creator you need to be aware of. You need to be comfortable around in that environment.
So Chris, you've been a producer, you've been a program manager, now you're a station manager. What are the skills or the skill shortages that you're finding in terms of this, not just the on-air part?
The biggest problem that we find, Nick, is the revenue money element, because in broadcasting, the only thing that you have as an asset is airtime. and you need to be able to sell it. As a presenter, beyond presenting, you need to be able to execute your responsibilities as a presenter to be able to attract sponsors. Sell the station, able to run the desk on your own. You need to be able to push the envelope. That is why I don't believe in censoring my talent, because everyone needs to be free to do whatever they want, be creative, think outside the box. And we know you've got your BCCSAs and you've got complaints, but that's something else. You need to be able to create content, like Sianda is saying, and that content should be able to make revenue for the station. You must be able to sell it. And if you attend workshops where you present your cyber talent to say, this is Neil, and Neil, please tell us as program managers, we must develop our own presenters, assist them wherever we can to ensure that they tick all the boxes. Our presenters should be able to be sellable. They need to be marketable. They need to be able to create revenue on air and off air, including on social media as well.
Thanks for that. We've got a couple of questions here. I got one from Tsepang Moji. Podcasts and YouTube channels are growing in South Africa, and perhaps this points to people loving content and engagement. What are music stations doing to improve their on-air content offering? Music on radio can always be substituted with Apple Music or Spotify, and streaming is an extreme kind of area that we are afraid of. But people are willing to pay for that. But what are we putting our emphasis on content? Not just quizzes and games, but engaging content. What are program managers doing with their on-air teams, their producers and their presenters in this digitized thing we're doing? Sianda?
I think the first thing we as a programmer you understand is the evolution of consumption of how radio is consumed by your audience. And now audience is no longer available only on one platform. There are different touch points that you have to satisfy from an audience consumption point of view. So when you are crafting a content structure, you really need to look at what you are running on your terrestrial platform, and how is your social and digital media platforms doing to complement your terrestrial platform, so that your content streams are running parallel. So those are the things that, as a programmer, you need to look into, and then also making sure that you utilize your talent in a manner that they are visible in all these platforms, and not only in one platform.
Henny, Jacaranda's had a really successful digital strategy and has been there for quite a while. What have you guys done to get to the point to make this a viable business for you?
Yeah, Neil, we have, and it's been a long time coming. It's not something that just happens overnight. And I think that part of the strategy that's worked really well is firstly knowing what we need to talk to our audience about, because I might find something interesting. It doesn't mean that our audience will find that interesting. So a lot of it is research driven. I think that research is a critical part of any media these days. So being able to research and knowing exactly what to engage that audience with. And then secondly, I think focusing on local and relevant issues or topics, whatever you want to call it, also works really well. I think it's critical that you talk about stuff that matters to the audience. And then, as Sianda was saying now, to be able to carry that from on air, where you've got access to an audience, onto social media platforms, or to translate it into video content, all of that within that ecosystem can amplify or take different angles to that. But essentially, it needs to be relevant, and it needs to, I think, be local.
So tell me, does the clickbait work the best?
The clickbait works the best for a click, but it doesn't work for the don't come back. No, I think clickbait is a very real thing, and I think we all fall guilty to that sometimes. But I think that where we see real connections and we see return traffic and engagement is when there's real proper content that's not clickbaity, and even more so when the talent gets involved. I think that when people love engaging directly with the talent, and social media and the digital platforms allow for a lot more of that two-way communication rather than the traditional terrestrial broadcast.
Sianda, in one of the voice notes that we received from a lady in Botswana, you've been involved in the technical production and the back-end tech and IT, and her question was, what equipment do you need to broadcast? I mean, it's if you look from, desk to transmitter and what goes on like in a studio, it's not an easy question, but what are the basics?
The basics really are you need a decent microphone, a decent laptop where you're going to load your software, your editing software and broadcast software if you're going to go live, and most importantly, a stable internet connection. Because without that connection, you will struggle. So those are just the basics. And you need to create an audience for yourself. So which means that also creating a blog at the same time, so that you can drive audience onto your podcast. So from a broadcasting point of view, then it gets to the space of transmission. Then that's when your costs will start escalating. But if you are going internet, internet is the easiest way to do it.
Okay, I just want to go back to, there are a lot of questions on the Q&A as well as in the chat area around developing skills and trying to get into radio stations. And I think we can personally, all of us deal with those and just answer them offline to the particular delegates who have been asking around this. And during this COVID period, I mean, we read, our newspapers have been through massive retrenchments, maybe in 2 or 3 cycles of retrenchments. Radio stations are starting now. We heard about the News 20 or the NASPAS stuff yesterday. Prime Media, Kaya, the SABC are also looking at it. And this goes to a point where there's a question here from Lance Claassen saying, are shareholders putting stations first or themselves? I know we don't want to look bad in front of our employers, but this is like a real issue. And are stations really going the whole hog and really going deep on this before they're starting to get to the point where it's retrenchments? Sianda?
Radio is a business, first and foremost, and more especially for commercial brands. It's a business. It is run as a business. And then you get to an issue of the actual business model. How do you evolve the business model? What do you do with the business model? Because as a business, it gets to a point that the model isn't functional anymore. So how do you future-proof the current business of a radio station or a brand? So those are conversations that need to happen at a high level from a strategic point of view, so that businesses don't get to that point. However, with the industry being hit by the pandemic, it was an issue of, it was sudden. No one knew about it. So as a consequence, the industry is suffering. But the issue of business models is something that at high level, it needs to be looked into on a regular basis to future-proof the business.
Chris, have you faced any of these kind of potential retrenchments or cutbacks where you're working?
Well, in terms of cutting costs, I started a couple of years ago with 2000. Started coming up with cost-saving measures, because running a station as huge as 2,000 meant our operational costs were extremely high. And I introduced automation between 12 midnight until 7 days. So saved a couple of millions there. And obviously with COVID, same thing's going to happen. Unfortunately, it's a decision that someone has to take. Obviously, you have to put your loyalty to the business and ensure that instead of shutting down completely, at least you're able to cut costs, cut a couple of people, unfortunately. But as long as you run the business, unfortunately, it's part of the business. COVID is affecting everyone, including our advertisers. So we have to make those unpopular decisions and cut overheads.
If you do cut heads at stations, don't you think that content will suffer?
Obviously, when you cut, you don't cut key essential team or your presenters. Obviously, whenever I cut, I always cut late night programs. That's why I cut, because most stations currently don't have audiences at night. Obviously, even advertisers, they don't spend more at night. So that's where I always start to cut costs, not your prime slots.
Henny, there was a question in the voice notes as well. How does RAMS work? I mean, obviously, this is like our currency in the commercial market with ad agencies and marketers and clients, but a lot of people don't really get how RAMS is done, the back end of RAMS. How is RAMS put together and published?
So I'm going to explain it in the way that it was explained to me, in the way that I understand it. So if there are any researchers out there and I get it wrong, my apologies up front. RAMS, or your radio audience measurement, is essentially diary-based. So you've got a research company. So it's all administered through the BRC, which is the Broadcast Research Council, South Africa. And they have a supplier who does year-round research. They go around and they hand out diaries. People keep a diary or a logbook, if you would, of which stations they listen to for a period of 2 weeks, and then those diaries go back, and then all of that data gets ingested, and that then gives you an indication of audience. So it's very much based on census data. There's a lot of so based on how many people are in the area, that would dictate how many diaries get handed out. And this is a worldwide practice. There are a couple of different means and measures here and there, but for the most part, the diary system still works really well. And Neil, as you said, it is our currency. I think that when your RAMs go up, you believe that they're legit. When your RAMs go down, you look for flaws, right?
No, it's a necessary evil, and I know that I get heart palpitations every time that RAMS diary is about to come out, and we don't take it lightly when those figures come out, because the amount of data you can extract from RAMS to give your presenters, producers an idea of what's happening on an average quarter hour, the male, female split, all the demographic information, I think is absolutely pivotal. And presenters and producers and basically everyone in the station should have access to those numbers, be in workshops to actually understand the station's audience. And also you can glean a whole range of data and demographic data about your opposition, the stations that you compete with. So that's one of the things, I mean, about presenters and producers is anyone worth their weight in broadcasting would be, the first questions I would ask them would be, what's your weekly cum as a presenter? What's your opposition's cum for your time slot? And what's your 30-second spot rate? How much does it cost your show? And if DJs or producers or presenters can't give you that information, then as a program manager, you're not doing your job. I mean, I can go to a breakfast show, like presenter, go, what's the 30-second rate on your show? And if they can't answer me that question, I haven't done my job. But look here, let's start talking about the age-old thing, and it's been around since I started radio in 1980, is this relationship between programming and sales, or as we call it, the programming sales divide. And my mantra is if I've got to think like a salesperson as a program manager and look for those opportunities and make sure that commercially things go to air in the right way, that we're hitting the right spot, that we're fixing problems during a promotion or a campaign. Why don't salespeople think like programmers when they go out to sell? So Sianda, in your experience, does this divide between sales and programming still exist? And if it does, what are you doing to fix it?
Unfortunately, it's still there. But also what's important is it's that constant communication between the programming office or the station and the sales office, making them understand what type of product you're producing, because in all honesty, the days of generics those days are almost over. Clients are now looking for content integration and content solutions for their products, and they want bang for the buck that they pay. So it becomes the job of you as the programmer to make them understand that this is the direction that the sale should be taking, and you explain to them the different components as to why you've taken that decision. So it's constant communication, constant touching point with the sales office is key in making sure that they understand what they are selling. Because I've come across instances where a salesperson doesn't even understand the brand that they are selling. So it becomes the office's job to make sure that they understand it.
Christopher, what's your experience in the sales programming divide? Please unmute your mic. Chris, unmute your mic.
Sorry, I think contrary to what Sianda is saying, I think I've had the best sales manager ever in my broadcasting career. We worked together closely. I think the key was she understood broadcasting and programming. So everything was made easy for me. We would support their initiatives, they would support us. And as a result, within the first 12 months of me being at 2000, we managed to double our revenue, because we could pull OBs within 24 hours because she understood the station, she understood the programming elements of the station, and she understood everything that we stood for. So when she goes to a client, she would know exactly what to sell. And if I had the money, I would take her to Lesotho.
Now, there are different types of sales. I mean, some stations have sales internally, direct, which means local sales and national sales. SABC has one department that does radio, television, national and local. And Henny, you guys work with MediaMark, which is an outsourced sales house, and they do your direct and your national. Is there still a sales divide between programming and sales?
I think it's certainly much less than what it used to be. I think that in my experience, the one really can't exist without the other, right? It really is quite symbiotic, obviously, because those are the two major parts of the business. And I think that when you can get into a space where there's more of a solution-driven approach, and the more we can train each other, the more we can understand. So, from a MediaMark perspective, there's a whole training division, and there's constantly training. From a station perspective, there's a lot of training. So I think that the more we know about each other, the more we can understand, because I think then there isn't this feeling like the one is trying to leverage the other one. I think as soon as there's a feeling like that there's mutual benefit for both, then it gets better.
Yeah, I think in terms of my experience is that when you're dealing with salespeople that are arm's length who aren't in the office with you, meetings, regular contact, that training you're talking about is getting all the salespeople into a room, talking to them about the station, about the new strategies you're implementing, the new ideas, the new features. That's absolutely pivotal, because sometimes I think salespeople go out and they're not armed and dangerous enough. They're just trying to fulfill a target. And the more they know about the product and the brand, just like Sianda said, that they know about what's going on currently, the more tools they have, like in the market. There's one of the questions here in the Q&A from Simrit Sagidi, saying, Henny, don't you think more digital ways of tracking listeners can be used by RAMs? I don't want you to answer it. I think I'll answer it on your behalf, because we use RAMs as the major accredited research for radio listening. Most radio stations, and I mean, you can answer if you like, guys, is there's a lot of other research being done with all the data we're getting from our social media and websites and all the in-house research we do, perceptual research, focus groups. There is a lot of data that is used in conjunction with RAMs to make decisions. And I say that looking at RAMs, it's not the begin and end of everything. It's just, it's a good guide to give us ideas of where listeners are, where they're listening, how long they're listening for. But there is a lot of other research that goes on that gives us far more insights into the daily lives and wants of our audience. Have you got, guys, anything to add there?
Yeah, sure. I'll add a little bit. Sim, thanks for the question. It's a good one. I think the other major obstacle probably when it comes to RAMs is that radio can be accessed through so many different platforms. So how do you effectively measure that? It would have been obviously massively convenient if all radios had a little thing that you could plug in and that could happen. But that's not necessarily possible. I know that wearables, as they call it, or as you alluded, is used in some markets, but that also becomes tricky, because if I walk into the engine garage and they're playing Jacaranda, it picks me up as a listener, but I also didn't necessarily make that choice to listen, although you should make that choice. But yes, Neil, like other research, definitely, like those should really reinforce what your strategies are.
Sianda?
Yeah, there are different systems you can use to just to zoom in into your particular listener. You can use the different touch points at your disposal. Your Facebook, your Instagram, and all your other social media platforms. You can use those platforms to zoom in into your particular listener, and then the easiest of ways is when your listeners are calling. I've certainly used that in the past to gauge the type of listener, the type of lifestyle. And I've also seen how some stations are using Facebook as a form of measurement. Most importantly, Facebook and Twitter. They're using Facebook and Twitter as a form of measurement to say, this is the type of audience that we have on social media.
Okay, I mentioned earlier when we started the question that came up that we 4 guys sitting on a panel talking about programming, and where I am in the commercial sector. I know that in PBS and community stations, when I've done training in community or looking at the PBS at the SABC, there are a lot of women in senior decision-making positions in the content and programming field. But in the commercial field, I really think it's absolutely lacking. And I've worked with a lot of people, and I'll name people like Claire Mawisa, Matapelo Monaisa, and a couple of others that I've worked with that are absolutely program managers. And I just wonder why they're not coming through and why stations aren't taking them seriously. Women think different and hear differently to men. And sometimes in meetings, you go in with a preconceived idea, and you'll be sitting with a group of people, and really the value that comes out of how women approach problems and conflict is totally different to how we see it. And so what are your opinions around this, Sianda?
It starts at a higher level, because change needs to happen, and also is the business itself, is the industry itself making sure that there is an enough stream of talent, so that there is a balance of talent. I mean, I've come across, in my career, I've come across a number of female content producers, and they're good at it. But the industry has failed, in a sense, to make sure that that healthy stream is maintained. And also, what do you do to incubate that talent? Because if the industry is not incubating that talent, then we'll be asking the very same question 5 years from now.
Henny, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, Neil, definitely. I think that it's something that the industry needs to address. I think what I have seen, which has been very encouraging, is I've seen a lot of female leadership across the stations in the last couple of years. I think of Asina Karim at YFM, Trish Taylor at Prime Media. We've just appointed Deidre King at the Jacaranda. Bonnie's at East Coast. There are female leaders in senior positions, but I think that from a programming perspective, I think that there's definitely something to still work towards there, because I think that the more diverse voices you have in the room, the better chance you have to check yourself, and better chance you have to actually connect with the audience, because your audience are all a bunch of different voices. So it's definitely something that needs to be driven harder across the sector.
Chris, are you still with us? I can't seem to find Chris on here. Yep, I think it's absolutely important that this gets addressed. And I'm not talking about in marketing or in news. I'm talking about in the programming sphere. And I also think that the job of the program manager may be thrown to the sidewalk, whereas you start looking more at programming teams of people that have the appropriate skills in understanding digital, understanding technical, understanding how to curate content. As opposed to these hierarchies that we've grown up with in radio. He's the program manager, there's a sales manager, the manager, etc. And to flatten this thing, because we all share the same kind of outlook in terms of getting stuff on air and online with the best possible quality and serving the needs of our audiences. We did the poll earlier around the program manager and demos, and hopefully they can actually put that up to see what people have said around about program managers and demos. But first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for being on the panel today. We have another session, Ask the Program Manager, on the 27th of July, Monday. Sorry we didn't get to all your questions, but what I'm going to do is ask everyone here to please put their email address into the chat thing, and then all the guys that have put stuff in, because we've got a load of questions on Q&A, a load of questions on chat, which we haven't got to. And if you'd be as good to put your email address up there so people can actually email you directly. I'm going to try to stay online and go through as many as I can in the next hour or so. But I'd like to thank everyone who's participated today for your questions and your comments. Thanks to Chris Chouane, Henny Myberg, and Sianda Fikalepe. We'd also like to thank our sponsors, and they are the Conrad Adenauer Institute, RCS Africa, our own FM, the NAB, the Abundant Media Group, as well as Crossfade Studios. And tomorrow will be the 5th day of Radio Days 2020, the new normal. And the session is called the Creative Council. It'll be moderated by Claire Mawisa, and the contributors would be Paulo Diaz. He's a content and creative person at Ultimate Media. Rafui Mofokeng, she's at Media Heads 360, and Tim Cully from Cliff Central. And they'll be looking at the changing landscapes, consumer budgets, and our delivery platforms in radio at the moment. So that's going to be a really good one. I'd like to thank everyone. I'm going to try to get to these questions, and if you guys can please just put down your email addresses, and we can get people can email us as well. I'm putting in mine now. It's neil@neiljohnson.co.za, and Henny, you guys can put yours in there as well, and we can answer some of these questions post the session. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you for joining this Radio Days Africa session. Click to watch or download the podcast.